Hello, my name is Tom Revel and welcome to the third and final part in this webinar series for Autodesk. So let's continue. Alright, so what we have right here is our model of our bow, and at the moment right now I'm pretty happy with it at the moment. Now this is the end result of the texturing process, and at the end of this video we are going to be looking into some quick lighting and rendering techniques using Play Blast and DX11, so that'll be exciting to get into that once we're all done. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to show you another file here. So currently at the moment right now, this is what I have here. Now at the moment right now, you can see this is a very simple setup. We've got plane layer 3, 2, 1, and then we've got the rope, which is dictated by this string here, as well as the AO layer. Now, when we're talking about the AO layer, we're talking about the ambient occlusion layer. Now, the reason why I was so fussy about the ambient occlusion layer in the previous videos was because of this technique. Now, this is where it really comes into itself in this regard here. Now, what I traditionally do when it comes to painting in Mudbox, you go ahead and let me just show you what would happen if I turned all these to normal. And let's do this, change this from multiply to normal, and change this linear burn to normal. And as you can see, there is a very dull texture to this bone right now. It doesn't look bad, but it just looks very plain and boring, and it's just generally pretty dull, and I personally don't like it at all. Now, one of the quick ways I've been able to kind of like put some interesting texture onto this model is if I go to my blending modes and I set this to linear burn, you end up seeing there are some really interesting elements which come out of this bow. Like there's this beautiful wandering weathering technique that kind of happens automatically. I mean, I know that we could spend hours and hours on getting this looking correct by actually kind of burning this off and doing all this stuff, but this is one of the quick ways that I end up just quickly getting all this weathering into an object. And look at the wonderful techniques we're getting here. We're getting this wonderful little burn that's kind of happening, this kind of scrubbed area where we're getting all this kind of dirt and grit and nasty caked on dust into these little corners. And you can actually kind of go ahead and weather these up even further if you wanted to. But what you can also do is you can actually also pull this into other areas. So if we put this to linear burn as well, and also going all the way up to here and putting a linear burn as well, look at the wonderful detail which we're having right now. This is all through the AO, or the ambient occlusion layer, that we have rendered out in other videos. Now, what we can see right now is look at this, a wonderful little detail that we're having right now. This is gorgeous. Even look at the shadow that is basically pushed upon there. Sure, there's some seams and everything like that, but we can clean those up later. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's sexy. It's beautiful. And I can't tell you how much I think this is such an awesome technique. Now, the reason why I think this is also a wonderful technique is because if you end up looking into this area here, and everything like that, you can actually see there's a lot more richer texture going on here as well. And frankly, I love it. And it's beautiful. And it's gorgeous. And so that's one of the reasons why I believe that this is such an awesome little technique. And let me just show you also something else. Now, if you see, look at this rope, it looks pretty dull right now, but I'm actually going to go and put this to linear burn as well. And look at that. Look at the transformation on that. It's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And that looks pretty awesome. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out from here. Now, I'm just going to give you a kind of a look into a little bit of a texturing technique which I have been found out during my time working with this program. And what I can do is I can go select and move tools, and then I go down to objects and I select this screw here. Now, during this Mudbox tutorial, or should I say breakdown of this model, What I've done is I've actually created some brushes, or should I say stencils, of my own. And I've created this one here, which is a longer version, and also I downloaded this one off the internet. Now, one of the things which I'll actually say to you, which is quite interesting about using stencils and projection, is that if you go into projection and you kind of select your brush, or you should have said your stencil, you can kind of go ahead and you can actually kind of pull this in, and you can go ahead, and everybody knows this. Basically, you can start painting this. You can start painting this on. So basically, I'm going to put this into another diffuse layer. I'm going to paint layer 4, and then what I can do is I can start painting this on, as it were. And what I can do is I'm just selecting this to this, and this to this, and what I can do is I can start painting this onto my layer, as it were. Now, one of the things which you end up basically finding out as you're doing this is that you can also change the color of your stencil. And the way you can do that is that what I did typically for something like this is that I could actually take something like a color like this. This is one of the things which I actually will say is one of the coolest things, is that you may not notice this, but this texture here on the limb of the wood, the red texture here, is exactly the same as this texture here. Now, the reason why this is so awesome is because if we go ahead and we select this color, I'm just going to scroll this up and I'm going to select this, like this, is that we can go ahead and we can actually start going ahead and we can start painting this on, which is awesome. Now, that was a bit of a tangent, and you can start seeing like various ways you can kind of start pulling all this wonderful texture in here as well. And look at that, you've actually now got something that looks fairly interesting, and you can start seeing the differences between the wood grain, and that's something you can do, which is pretty cool. So let's just kind of go back to the way it was. Now, the reason why I selected this was because in the end, what we can do is, sorry about that tangent, but I just thought it was worth talking about. So if I push Alt and T, you end up getting this selection here, which shows all of these wonderful UVs in shell form, which you can see from the UV view. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this, select model, oops, and I'm just going to go select objects, select this, isolate, go front, and then we go to here, and we go control and select outside of this. Now that looks pretty cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select here, select down, and then I'm going to pull this to here. Now I'm going to create another UV layer, or should I say a diffuse layer. Now this is what I can do, and I can actually start painting this on. So I can just go paint, and I'm painting this on. And this is the way I can quickly and very succinctly, and let's just kind of make this color black, just because I want to make this look better. And I'm just going to deselect this by going into my object tool. And instantly you'll see there is this really cool effect that ends up happening on this object. Look at that wonderful detail. We are able to successfully recreate something that looks like this. I'm just going to go back to my Maya files and go to projects, Autodesk Weapon, and source images. And as you can see with all this, you can actually see this is what I will be recreating. You can actually see that there's almost like a grip to this screw here, and this is exactly what you can replicate very succinctly through Mudbox, and you can kind of get all this wonderful texture. And this is all in the diffuse, and this is the thing that I honestly say that is really, really interesting about if you're making textures. If you've got a decent diffuse, you can pretty much do anything you want with other layers, or should I say other maps. It is just beautiful. You can actually do things like, if you can make the best diffuse in the world, then you have the basis for a good normal, you have a good specular, and it's very easy to go ahead and get all these maps done. It's beautiful, it's lovely, and I love it. Now, one of the things which you may notice also is you may be saying to yourself, well, how did I get this going on here with my this wood texture kind of going all the way up here? Now, that is also the same technique. If I select this and I go into Alt-T, you can see that there is this wonderful little mode here. This is with the texture modes on. Should I say, this is the shell view on. That you can see, look at all these wonderful details that the AO is bringing through. Also with the rope that's being pushed into this edge here. It's wonderful, it's beautiful, and you can actually then go ahead and paint your UVs on individual faces, and this is awesome. I love it. And not only that, but if you see this little section here, if you look into this future section here, now I'm going to go back to this original model here, or here. So if you look into this particular model here on Maya, you end up seeing that I've got these wonderful little details here that are kind of like, you can see there is this section here where you can, where there's just wood. Now, if I go back into here, now I'm going to show you a quick technique in order to kind of get these isolated. So what I can do is I'm just going to make another new layer, like so. And actually, at the moment right now, if I can get, what I could do is if I unselect these, and I just deselect it, and I go here, I can actually go ahead and start selecting all of these faces. Now, typically, it's a different technique that's been used here. So if I go into, or should I say, different selection mode, if you go into here and go render, there will be a render selected using by face, and this typically has been done by vertex. And as you can see, if I select this, it ends up basically looking like this. I find that a little bit inaccurate, so I always like to use by face. Now this allows us, using the select move tools, to actually select the face. Now this allows us to quickly isolate a face, so I'm just going to move it back and pull this up. And then I can go ahead and start selecting all of these modes. And you can actually start isolating all of these faces. And then you go isolate. And then you can see that you can instantly start pulling out some of these details. And then you can start painting on this section here. And as you can see, you can start pulling out all these wonderful details. Now, this is the way that I ended up doing this on this part of the model. And as you can see, you can actually start pulling out little details like this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and unisolate this model. And as you can see, this is the way I got this section started to texture for this particular area here. Now, that's just one little way that you can go ahead and start texturing using Mudbox. Now, since we're coming up to the final 5 minutes of this video, I'm just going to quickly zap into Maya, and we're going to look into the last part of this video, or should I say the last little thing that I want to cover in this video, which is lighting and texture. So what I've done with this model here is you can go ahead and see that I've kind of got a very simple setup here where I've got two directional lights and the top of this bow there is also an ambient light here. Now what I'm going to do here is, you may think to yourself, well, this looks amazing. Well, what I've done is I have made my diffuse for this bow, and then what I've done is I have made a normal and a specular map in an external program, and then what I've done is I've pulled this back into Maya, and I've done some few cleaning up techniques through here. And as you can see, I've also selected and finished up all these little details. Now, one of the things which I've done is I have gone ahead and I've fixed up all the topology, and it's now looking correct and wonderful. And the way I typically do that is that if you end up basically finding something like a triangle or an n-gon or something like that, you can go ahead and fix that. But since this is a game asset and I'm not too worried about basically triangles, I've just gone ahead and just made them all triangles. But originally when I had this model, this was the selection here. And you end up basically having this awful little n-gon here, but I fixed that by adding another triangle to this section here. So that's good. Now, one of the things that I need to do is to go ahead and pull this in, and now as you can see I have got myself a wonderful looking model here. Now what I've used is the DX11 shader, and this is one of the shaders which I think really is underused in Maya, and I really do think it's underused, mainly because it is one of the most powerful shaders I've seen in a long while. And also the fact is, look at the results I'm getting on from this. It's beautiful. It's just lovely. And one of the things which I will typically do if I'm doing a render for a games company and I want to show them what they've commissioned and I've created, is to show them a real-time render of what is happening. Now, at the moment right now, you could easily kind of take this down, as it were, because this is quite a heavy model, but at the moment right now, I'm just leaving this the way it is. Now, one of the things that I'll do, typically, is I will go ahead and I will just apply this DX11 shader all over, and then what I'll do is I'll set up a decent little light rig like this, and then what I'll do is I'll do a turntable, and that I will typically do by going visualize. What I'll probably do is snap to my right view, line it all up, and then I'll just go visualize, create turntable, go like this, and I will just choose the frame range, and I'll make sure it's 200 and 200. Turntable, fantastic. And just need to select this section here, apply, and then what I just can do here is I end up basically changing all my render settings here, making sure that it's like 1080p or whatever I need it to be. Now, what I typically do is that then there is this turntable camera here. Now, I click and middle mouse button and drag it into here. Now, also what I do is I show lights, and I remove that so that there is no lights shown in the scene. And then I change the background using Alt-B to black, and then look what happens here. Let's pull this into here, and then look at this. It just gives you this wonderful looking bow. Now, what I can typically do right now is go right click, play blast. I'm going to version this up to 38. And this is the section here that I'm looking for, making sure that all these options are selected and making sure that show ornaments is not. And then hit apply. And making sure it's from the render settings and hit apply. Go with this. I've already done this movie already and I'm going to hit OK. Now that should go ahead and start doing the play blast. Now I'm just going to zap back to my project files, go to movies, wait for the file to be done, select, and as you can see you've got this wonderful looking render of your bow. Now this is the end of this webinar series. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something new. This has been Tom Revel for Autodesk, signing off. Thank you very much. Goodbye.